Welcome to Legacy Collection Chat, a brand new series which aims to provide you with a deep dive into the Mattel Legacy Collection and the origins of this prestigious line. I'm your host for the series, Tom Jurassic, and with me today is the man himself, JC.
Hey Tom, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Yeah, good. As I was saying, I've been a little bit sick recently. You know, the family's been unwell, but we're all seem to be back on top of it now. So we seem pretty good.
On the mend because of that Jurassic World Dominion energy, right?
Absolutely.
Jurassic is running through the veins of the entire family. So, multipacks have a huge value on the collectibles market. They are often a way of giving us, as consumers, access to products and assortments which we wouldn't otherwise receive, providing toy developers with an opportunity to release items which otherwise wouldn't have mass appeal. We live in an age of army building, and Mattel seemed to understand this with the 2-packs they released under the Legacy Collection moniker. One of which wasn't strictly branded as a Legacy Collection pack, although it seemed to be available under the same limited strategy, whilst the other quite literally featured Alan Grant himself. In today's episode, we are delighted to be able to explore the multi-packs that Mattel have released. So JC, did you even know that these multi-packs existed before today's episode? And what do you think of them as a concept?
Yes, I was really aware of these, mainly because the first one I saw was the variant pack with Alan Grant and the Dilophosaurus. I was aware that there were the two versions out there, but yeah, the Grant version, as soon as I saw that with the Dilophosaurus, I really wanted that, and in the end, a very helpful and kind Stephen Ray Morris helped me acquire the pack from the States because there wasn't any sign of it here in the UK.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting to note because here in the UK, as we touched on earlier in this series, there really was a shortage of Legacy Collection humans, right?
Yes.
And even in like this kind of multi-pack, you would expect that to have more appeal, but it seemed like for whatever reason, the UK market just never got Alan Grant, even if he had 5 other dinosaurs with him.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that, you know, a pack that I felt was probably one of the best of the whole line in terms of its appeal was one of the hardest to get hold of. I mean, you had like a pack with the Dilophosaurus, which is like a fan favourite, the Gallimimus, you know, and Alan Grant. You know, and he had the Compy thrown in and the 2 Raptors as well with the jumping play feature. I mean, it was just like, for me, it was a no-brainer. That should have been available everywhere, but it really wasn't.
Yeah, it's really strange when you think about how they sort of choose what products are available where, and I feel like we're kind of seeing that again at the moment. So for context, for anyone listening, this will probably be releasing in May or June, but we're actually recording this in March. So at the time of recording this, the Hammond Collection and the Legacy Collection don't appear to have any UK retailers, or resellers even, which is really... It's just weird thinking about that balance and how do you work out where to market a collector's product, why do you not market it in certain demographics. It's an odd conundrum to be in, I think.
Absolutely. And then we've had our share of exclusives but as well. I mean, we've had the Spinosaurus was readily available here in the UK when it wasn't available in other places, which was really strange. But yeah, I'd rather it was just everyone was able to, you know, I like the fact that you have to reach out, you know, to your US brothers to try and find and sisters to try and find, you know, these toys. But yeah, it's strange how it's not fair for everyone to just be able to get the ones that they're most interested in.
Yeah, I think that's really a fair way of putting it. And hopefully things do get fairer moving forwards and more products are available. We know that Mattel have got Mattel Creations as an online platform, and that is where they sold the Ray Arnold pack to great success internationally. Cool. So hopefully in the future we might see other products pop up through platforms like that as well. I think that's really the way to go.
Nice.
I could linger on distribution and do a whole episode around it because I think it's a really pertinent issue. But we will press on and we will look at the figures specifically.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you. Obviously, we've got two different packs here. So we've got the pack with Alan Grant you mentioned, and then the second 6-pack, which is more just generic dinosaurs. So when you look at them initially, are there any particular paint applications across both packs which stand out to you? And what would be your favourite figures from both of these packs and why?
Well, obviously, I really like the Dilophosaurus because it's the sort of closest we've got to the Jurassic Park Dilophosaurus. Also, the Gallimimus in both packs. There's a paler one, and then in the Alan Grant pack, it's more like a vibrant orange sort of color with brown paint apps on the back. Either of these are fine for me as a Gallimimus, representation. When you think of like the Kenner lines in 1993, they would have color variations and stuff, and in my mind, I would just kind of work that into the variation of different dinosaurs on Isla Nublar. So for me, that sort of variation isn't too much of a bad thing. But I guess those are the ones that appealed to me most because they're from the original Jurassic Park. I guess the scale is something that is a little bit off-putting because the Dilophosaurus looks about maybe the right size next to Grant. Yeah. But the Gallimimus feels a little bit small. But yeah, those were the main ones. The Raptors are a bit more Jurassic World-y in design, coloration and sculpt. And also, this was like quite early on in the Legacy line, so the oversized feet of the Raptors put me off a bit at the time when I saw this because I was thinking, what's going on there with the sculpt? And I know the Gallimimus and the Dilo have it a little bit too, but it's more prominent on the Raptors when you look at them in the box. So for that reason, I was not so interested in the Raptors in the pack, but I just thought it was cool that it came with extra dinosaurs. And then you've got the other version of the Dilophosaurus in the other pack, which has a completely different coloration. I would say I'm interested in any Dilophosaurus, but I would say I prefer the original Jurassic Park design. And then there's also a Raptor that has a sort of almost like a Lost Worldian look to it with the tiger stripe sort of coloration. It's a bit more saturated in its coloration. But the Gallimimus in that pack does look more closer to the one that you see in Jurassic Park, the pale, the paler one with the brown stripes. I would say that looks more accurate to what we see in Jurassic Park. So I guess if I was getting that pack, I'd get that probably just for the Gallimimus and that Raptor.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's cool hearing that you're just a big fan of Dilophosaurus in general. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because we'll touch on this sort of more throughout this series, but obviously there have been sets that specifically focus on that moment of the first film, and it's really interesting that the subsequent releases still haven't managed to be quite as accurate as the initial release that was in this 6-pack.
Right.
Obviously, you've got the Amber Collection, which is super detailed and looks fantastic. But for me, at least, and I'm not sure if you would agree or not, this really does still feel like the definitive 3 3/4 inch Dilophosaurus.
Yeah, it looks like it. From the ones we've got so far, I would say, especially in the frill area, I'd say this one looks really nice.
Yeah.
There's a few paint apps, kind of missing on the rest of the body, but I'd say it's probably, in terms of its likeness, it instantly says Jurassic Park to me.
Yeah, which is exactly what you want.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was looking for.
So when you're looking at a pack like this, obviously the creative freedoms that Mattel get to sort of call back to things are a lot greater in these kinds of packs where you get multiple animals in one setting. Yes. So I was interested. Obviously, in later assortments, we've seen a lot more callback to the Kenner line. So with one of the latest versions of the Triceratops, for example, you've got a pattern that really closely matches the Kenner trike that came with the tent. So I was interested, are there any figures in either of these multi-packs that look as though they pull from the history of the toys and the Kenner packs? Because this sort of feels like the first chance Mattel would have had to do that.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Looking at them, I can't see any that really leap out at me.
Yeah.
In terms of callback. I mean, the Compsognathus reminds me of the Lost World. So there was a Compsognathus with a magnet on its mouth, and it would attach to Dieter Stark's chest, so that he'd have like a biting gimmick, so you could put him on his chest. So that reminds me of that a little bit. But apart from that, I'm trying to think. The paint schemes, I don't think. You got the Pteranodon, which obviously alludes to the Jurassic Park 3 line, and I don't know if there was one that was particularly, matching that colour scheme. But apart from that, I think they're all fairly new.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously the one that's in the pack with the tiger stripe colour is a little bit like the one from Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park, the electronic one. So I guess that, in terms of matching old Kenner figures, that probably is actually the closest one. That raptor with the tiger stripe lines is reminiscent of the electronic larger one from Jurassic Park, from the Kenner line.
It's interesting in some ways that there's not more parallels in this kind of pack, because I feel like this would be the perfect place to do that, where you're kind of doing your generic dinosaurs anyway. So getting that callback just adds that little bit of extra appeal to fans.
It's a good point.
Because I feel like otherwise you just look at these kind of sets and you think they're great, but they're a lot of repaints, and that's where it kind of sort of loses that more collector-centric appeal, I guess.
Yeah, and they seem to be getting better at that as time is going on. Like, they seem to be dropping more Kenner nods. But yeah, in this initial pack, like, there could have been much more, obvious on the nose nods to the old Kenner line. I mean, I'm even thinking like the Dilophosaurus variant that's in the other pack could have been maybe a more paler one with the colour scheme that matches the electronic Dilophosaurus from the Kenner line. If you're going to do a variant, why not exploit that opportunity? And also maybe with the raptors in the other sets, maybe they could have been Jurassic Park 3 variants or something. Just something to add a little bit of variation and have some callbacks going on, like you say.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it kind of it gets to the real heart of what defines a legacy collection item, and what is just another Jurassic World item.
Yes.
And I think in that kind of regard, it sort of makes sense that second six-pack, although we included it here because it was very much a Smiths exclusive in the UK, like the Legacy Collection, it was never specifically called a Legacy Collection pack, probably because they felt that it had the same sort of mass appeal as just the broader product line.
Yeah, and it does feel with the Grant pack that they've added 2 Jurassic World Raptors there to maintain the appeal of a Jurassic World product in there, so that if a kid was passing by, it wouldn't all be legacy stuff. Yeah. So they've added something recognizable, that looks like 2 members of the Raptor squad, so that it's not completely legacy. But in a way, I feel that's a little bit of a shame not to have an entire legacy pack, and I'm sure it put a few collectors off, because that's what you're buying, is a legacy pack, and yet you've got these 2 shoehorned modern Raptors in there. So it does feel a bit strange in the way that the ensemble of figures is there's some odd choices going on.
It's interesting seeing the evolution of the line, isn't it? And seeing that now we're at a point where a character like Roland Tembo and a juvenile Parasaurolophus can have enough collector's appeal to get a full release. Yeah. Whereas back here, sort of at this point in 2018, when the line initially began, it really felt as though there wasn't that sort of confidence in the collector market, if you like.
It's a good point. It's almost like after the first film had come out, they now realised that there's a whole generation of kids who are going back and watching these older films, and those films are standing alone enough for them to release toys that are purely based in the legacy, of those older films. And that's quite nice, because these aren't just for collectors. I think they are for kids as well. They are going to be seen by kids in these big toy stores. So it's nice that Roland Tembo has got enough appeal on his own with a Parasaurolophus, and kids will actually recognise that enough for them to make a toy just purely about that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's really awesome to see that we've evolved to that stage of brand awareness.
Yeah, that's great.
I was interested to ask you, did Kenner ever release large multi-packs like these back in the days of the original lines? Because I know when I was growing up, so for anyone who isn't familiar with how young I am, my sort of collecting heyday initially was 2008 when the Clone Wars film was out.
Oh yeah.
And I remember at the time they did like exclusive Argos packs. So you had an exclusive pack with Yoda and 4 Coruscant Guard clone troopers. And then you had an exclusive pack with Obi-Wan and 4 212th Attack Battalion clone troopers. So I know that very much in sort of the early 2000s, big army builders were a focus. But I'm interested as to whether it was something that was even considered back in 93.
It's funny actually because what we're talking about in the early 90s is a time when there was a really common phrase, and that phrase was action figures sold separately. And that would always be, like a really common phrase on the advertising.
Yeah.
So you'd have whatever it was, like the Batman vehicle or whatever, and it'd be action figures sold separately. And I think it's because you'd always need an action figure. You're never just going to buy the car. So it's actually a selling point. It's like if the parent buys the car, they're going to have to buy the action figure at some point. So actually everything was really disparate and you'd never get a convenient multi-pack. But having said that, there were instances of it. So for example, in the Lost Worlds line, there was an Argos exclusive here in the UK, which was released in other places, but it was the Hunter, I think it was Hunter Tracker set, and it came with a Hunter figure with loads of like capture equipment and capture gear, and then it came with 2 dinosaur figures that you couldn't get on their own anywhere else.
That's so cool.
And that was a really unique set, and I think my dad spotted that one and said, "Look at this! Have you seen this before?" And I was like, "Whoa, what's this?" It was a really bizarre set, and I bought it, and I remember thinking that the production quality, even as a child, I remember thinking the production quality felt lower than the rest of the line. Like it felt, I can't describe it. It just felt like it was a different manufacturer or something. Even like the capture gear and stuff, the plastic used on it just felt like slightly cheaper in a weird way.
Yeah.
But
it's like you see that with some legacy stuff, don't you? Where they pack in so much that then when you get it in hand, there might be details missing. So there's one set in particular I'm thinking about that we will touch on later this series.
Yes.
Where you think, well, you're packing a lot in here, but actually, is it worth packing so much in if you're not going to maintain the quality expectation that you've already set?
Exactly. Yes, and this was one instance of that, I think, because even the figure felt simplified and the paint apps felt simplified. I mean, this was even for the 90s, so things were pretty simplified anyway. But I was really cool. I thought the set was really cool because it came with so much, and the dinosaurs had kind of, so one had rubbery skin and had a dino damage wound that would come off. So actually it was a really cool set, but that was one of the isolated instances of that, and it was Argos again, so I don't know if there was some Argos connection with multi-packs. The only other thing I can think of is in the Kenner line you did have die cast 2 packs of figures, which you get 2 dinosaurs in one pack, but that wasn't really like action figures coming with stuff. Everything was always sold separately in the 90s. It was always like but what was cool actually, I will say, is in the original Kenner line you had the action figure and then you had a mini dinosaur figure, and that was actually unique because at the time I remember I didn't have much pocket money, and it was a really hard decision going into the toy shops and going, do I want a dinosaur figure or do I want a human figure? Because my gut would always say I want a human figure with a gun, a spring-loaded gun, because that's got loads of playability, and that was what I focused on. I think because it felt like a Batman figure, it was that sort of excitement of something that did something. Whereas a dinosaur figure felt a bit more like a lump of a figure. But I still had that difficult decision. Get that. Yeah, but but the figures came with a baby dinosaur. So actually then the decision was made for me that actually I'm going to get Muldoon first because he's got a little spring-loaded gun, but he comes with a baby T-Rex, and the T-Rex is so cool. It's one of the coolest dinosaurs in this whole film. So for me, it was an easy decision once they bundled that little dinosaur minifigure, but that's as far as it went with the Kenner line, really.
It's really cool seeing those parallels as well, actually, because obviously, I really got into dinosaurs with Primeval, and the Primeval line by Character Options, you would have a human character and then a small dinosaur or a small animal from the show. So Nick Cutter came with 2 Hesperalis or something. They're like prehistoric birds with really sharp teeth, and then you had like Abby came with a dodo, Stephen Hart came with several spiders.
So it's similar to the Kenner
so like a similar approach. So it's cool seeing how maybe that initial approach of the added value and the complete playset in one package has really informed how the toy industry still presents these things today.
Absolutely. And Mattel really are doing that now, obviously, with their figures. They've been doing that for years, even with the JP3.
I mean, you look at the latest packs where you get a slightly bigger set now that is Claire, a full-size dinosaur in the Dilophosaurus, and then a weapon, or Owen with Beta and a fox. It just gives you more sort of... It's all about that play pattern, isn't it, that it breaks down to, and it's creating that more sort of complete story within the box, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a risk, I guess, for the toy makers, because you could go and get that one pack and then you're done with the whole line because you don't need anything else.
Yeah.
But I think what they do is they try and isolate one key figure that, like, a Claire without an Owen would be, might be a little bit boring. So they're putting Claire in with a dinosaur, but then you need to get Owen, so Owen will be in another set. So I think that's the way they're breaking them up now and still maintaining that sellability.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to end with a little bit of speculation, because you know that I love my speculation.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, what multi-packs would you like to see in the future? So if the Legacy Collection was going to do, like, say, a 6-pack or even a 4-pack or just a couple of humans and a couple of dinosaurs, what would your dream multi-pack be?
I think film-focused packs, whether it be from Fallen Kingdom, Lost World, Jurassic Park 3, I think ones that really feel like they're focusing on those films in particular would be really cool. So a Lost World pack would be like Sarah, Nick Van Owen, the baby Rex, like that sort of thing. And then, maybe some compies and then something else, or baby Stegosaurus or something. So it feels like it's a Lost World themed pack. I think that would be really cool to see. Same with the JP3 one. Because you've got the Pteranodons and also the Raptors. But imagine if you had like the Raptor pack from Jurassic Park 3. Because those Stan Winston designs are still regarded as some of the best Raptors we've ever had.
Gorgeous.
So it'd be amazing to see a multi-pack with those, with the paint apps done actually fairly nicely. And that pack would just be like, gold dust. If you look at the way that the Spinosaurus is sold, it would be like all you'd need from JP3 would be that Legacy Spinosaurus and that Legacy Raptor pack, and you're sorted, aren't you? So I think it's a bit of a, I don't know, I feel like that's a really obvious one, and we'll come on to JP3 style Raptors in the Mattel line so far later on, but I think it would be nice if they did that faithfully the way that they've done the Spinosaurus.
I've got a quick pitch for you before we round this episode out. And that is the Jurassic Legacy 6-pack. So you get a Jurassic Park Velociraptor, you get the juvenile Tyrannosaurus Rex from the Lost World, you get the Pteranodon from JP3, you get Blue from Jurassic World, the Stygimoloch from Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and the Pyroraptor from Jurassic World Dominion.
I mean, that would be, I think, undeniably, that would be a really popular pack because it's got so many notable dinosaurs from the saga. And maybe that's what they could do, like the saga collection, so you have one from each film for like all sorts of things, characters. You could have a saga character multi-pack. You know what I mean?
Pitch.
That'd be amazing. Like you could have like, Tembo, you could have Billy from Jurassic Park 3. So you could have a just figures multi-pack would be amazing as well, like ones that you haven't had before and maybe are a bit
the
more
Jurassic
bespoke.
World figures Lowry.
Lowry. Like if you had like one just with, and actually if they just put a bit of time into each of those figures, like the way that Nedry from the SDCC pack is just his shirt is done really nicely.
Yeah.
Something like that, but with each of these cool figures. That pack would sell, man. It would be huge. And I can't imagine it being hugely expensive to make these small 3 3/4 inch human figures. It can't be that expensive, especially if they've got no gimmicks. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? They would just be just little block figures and in a multi-pack, so it wouldn't be expensive to make, but the sell value of those, I mean, people would love to own that, a multi-pack of notable figures.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's loads of things they could do with their multi-packs.
Mattel, if you're listening, take our ideas and run with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe even like a props multi-pack as well is the other thing, I think. So, the way you've got these little radios that they've been using from Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just have a pack that's just accessories, and it could be stuff they've already put in other sets, and it's just an accessory box. I think kids would buy that. It's there's so much playability that you can get out of accessories. And
even if you do something like Isla Nublar Armory Attack, where you have an ACU worker, a raptor, and then like a locker that's got loads of accessories in it.
That would sell. That would so sell.
Yeah.
Because there's so much playability with that.
Yeah. I'm going to go away and think about all the potential now.
Yeah, there's so many cool multi-packs.
We could...
Argos, if you're listening.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. If you guys like the speculation side of this show as well, then let us know in the comments down below, because we're not going to go too much further into it this episode. But if people enjoy it, then maybe in the future, as part of some kind of different content, we could speculate on what Jurassic toys we'd like to see in the future. So
Absolutely.
Definitely let us know if you'd be interested in hearing that. And with all of that said, that is it for this episode. So thank you as always for tuning into Legacy Collection Chat, and make sure to stay tuned to Jurassic Collectables across social media, as we have plenty more episodes coming as we approach the release of Jurassic World Dominion. You can also find me at Tom Jurassic across social media. JC, why don't you sign off?
So don't forget to rate, comment and subscribe, and tune in for the next episode of Legacy Chat.